Pure Erica mode. Thank you all for coming. It's really wonderful to have everyone here this morning. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Rebecca Frost-Davis. She is the Director of Instructional and Emerging Technology at St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. She was also formerly a fellow with NITLE, and I know a lot of you are familiar with that. She is one of the co-editors of the forthcoming Digital Pedagogy in the Humanities, Models, Concepts, and Experiments. She was also one of the founders of DH Commons, which probably some of you have looked at for resources and information. And she's going to be speaking to us today on liberal education in the emerging digital ecosystem. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks so much, Erica, and thanks for having me here today. I live in Texas now, although I lived in Philadelphia for 7 years, so I am wondering where the mythical snow is. Yeah. But they told me I shouldn't say that because it's really hard to start. Did it really just start?
On cue.
See, I said it, sorry. Anyway, but I had a nice walk over here from the hotel this morning. So today I'm going to be talking to you about what does liberal education have to do with digital culture and the digital ecosystem? And this is a question I've been thinking about in particular for the last year and a half as I've been working with a group on a project called General Education Maps and Markers. And this is a project that is sponsored by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, otherwise known as AAC&U. So just quick audience check. Are you familiar with AAC&U? More or less? Okay, great. Good, so I don't have to explain that. So generally speaking, I will explain a little bit. They're an organization that advocates for liberal education. I sometimes tell people, they sort of started out as a club for presidents of liberal arts colleges, but now they have a much broader mission, and that's really to advocate for liberal education for all students in all kinds of settings. So as part of that, and as part of General Education Maps and Markers, what they're trying to do with this project is thinking about what does liberal education look like in the 21st century, and what should it look like? When we're in a world that has constant change, driven by the twin forces of globalization and technology, how do we make a liberal education that prepares students for that world? So General Education Maps and Markers are GEMS for short. They're fun, they're clever acronyms at AAC&U. This is the first publication, which I will drop a copy of in a Google folder for you later, or you can go to their website and pay for it. So their first publication, they came out with design principles for what a 21st century liberal education should look like. And the idea is, you can come up with whatever your general education is, but you should keep these sorts of principles in mind. And they include proficiency, agency, and self-direction. So proficiency, that is, you should learn something. You should develop proficiency in something. Agency and self-direction, and I think this one is particularly needed by students today, especially when we start to think about the new majority. So not so much the traditional college students, which I was, but the ones who might start working and then go to college, might go to community college and switch to a four-year college, or students who are veterans and then coming to college. So they more and more need agency and self-direction, but also if you think about students once they leave college, if we're in a world of constant change, they need agency and self-direction to be able to adapt to that change. Another design principle, and again, this one is they've had for a long time, integrative learning and problem-based inquiry. Equity, which is not just equal opportunity for all students, but also support so that it's not just equal access, but it means that you give them the support so they are all equal and can take advantage of that opportunity. And then transparency and assessment. That is, students should be able to understand what they've learned and explain it to others. So not just our transparency and assessment, but that they can articulate what they've learned, the value of a liberal education. I've taught at several liberal arts colleges, and I remember, at one of them, I won't say which, but it's probably true at a lot of places, right? My students had no idea that they were getting a liberal education or what they even meant. They knew they were at a small college, and that's what they were thinking about. Helping students understand what that means. So, that's one way that I've been thinking then about what liberal education looks like in the 21st century, and in particular in the digital ecosystem. And there were 3 working groups on this project, and I was part of the digital working group. So particularly thinking, how do you combine liberal education and the sort of model of learning that happens in digital culture. But this question also hits close to home for me because I myself have a very nice liberal education. I have a BA, MA, and PhD in classical studies. In many ways, it's sort of, model of liberal arts learning. And at the same time, as Erica mentioned, my title is Director of Instructional and Emerging Technology. And so the question I always get is, how did the one prepare you for the other? And what I always say is, I have a very good liberal education. That means in part that I have content expertise in ancient Greek and Latin languages and literatures, but it also means that I have a doctor of philosophy, philosophia. I have a love of learning. I am a lifelong learner. And what that doctorate really indicates is that I know how to learn things, and I know how knowledge is organized. I know how to approach new domains and learn about them, and that's how I've learned about digital humanities, and that's how I learned about digital pedagogy, was through the skills I developed learning about ancient Greek and Latin. I think all of you guys are lifelong learners as well, right? That's what it means to be a scholar. You are constantly learning on your own. And for your students then, you become models of how to learn. So they're coming to you, they are getting content expertise, but they're also seeing this is their goal. Maybe not to get a PhD, but their goal is to be a lifelong learner, and you're modeling those skills and abilities for them. So we're going to do a little bit of an exercise to think about how you learn and how you learn in the world around you now that you are beyond your formal education, right? I think most of you are probably not going to classes to learn, right? You're going to teach the classes, but for the most part. So my question for you is, where and from whom do you as a professional learn outside of the formal classroom or the Keynote, because yes, we're all in a classroom right now, or a workshop or a conference session? And if you go to this URL, everyone has their devices, right? Mobile devices, laptops, something like that. It's bit.ly/libedunbound. And that should take you to an open Google Doc. And let me see if I can get to it. And that's where I want you to answer that question. So think about it for a minute. If you don't have a device, lean over to your neighbor who does and get them to put your answer in for you. So we're going to do a little bit of an exercise here. This is one of the things. And see, we can see people typing already. So again, think about when you're learning new things, how is it that you learn them? Where do you learn them? Who do you learn them from? And we're just do this little experiment, see how it turns out.
Can you go back to the URL?
I will go back to the URL. Yeah. Yeah, because you really can't get it off that. So there's the URL. And so it's bit.ly/libedunbound, which is Liberal Education Unbound. This is all my secret plot to get you to do the work of doing this talk, and I'll just stand up here.
We recognize the strategy. Students do too.
Yeah. All the little colored boxes moving on the iPad now.
So we're seeing
I wasn't even looking.
I was just excited to hear that.
Oh, I want to be the current. Look at you.
I lost myself.
I apparently move on.
You were so cool to like that. I wanted to know who that cool person was. Satire is good.
Oh, I want to see
Please, could I be the one?
You are the one.
Most people that had a chance to get an answer in? Feeling pretty good? Okay. We're going to do something that you should never do when you're doing a presentation, which is play with technology on the fly. But if it doesn't work, that's okay, because I firmly believe you learn from failure. So I had to start telling people that because I used to do workshops, and if I messed up in front of them, they would question my authority. But I actually really do think you can learn more from watching me mess up than when I do it all perfectly. So I'm going to go to this, and I see there's still a little bit of typing going on, but I'm going to try to select everything. Let's see, wow, we got onto a second page. So select all, copy. We're going to switch over here to a tool called Voyant. Has anyone ever used Voyant? How about Wordle? Has anyone used Wordle?
Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with doing word clouds. That's what we're going to do. Voyant is actually a whole suite of tools that lets you do computer-assisted text analysis, but one of the most basic forms of that is doing a word cloud. So we're going to paste, and then we're going to reveal. We'll see what we come up with. Okay, so here's our nice word cloud. Now, you'll notice one of the biggest words there is and also with. So let's get rid of those. We're going to go over here to stock words, and let's pick English, because I don't think Dutch will work for us. And I will say OK, and it will re-render.
Nice.
Oh, this is really nice, because this is the point I wanted to make. We learn from colleagues. This is how I learn all my stuff. I mean, I might end up going on to read a book for a reference and reading, but I usually end up getting them from other people. So there's so much stuff out there that I find more and more that I use what I like to call the person filter. I use people to help me filter other things that I want to read. So anyway, here's this word cloud, and I will later save it and put it in. I'll drop it in the folder that I'm going to share with you guys later, and also put it up on my blog. But any comments on any insights from looking at this? Again, on the fly.
I'm struck by the fact that intranet is quite small. That's interesting to me.
We do see online, but yeah.
I wonder if a lot of the internet is woven into some of the other things.
I imagine, yeah. I mean, I think, for me, I think the internet is a vehicle for me to get to these other things. And for me, at least, learning is a lot about connecting with people who can then connect me to ideas. And I think it also gets out into the fact that learning is everywhere, right? It's not just in the formal classroom. Yes?
I think that's a really big distinction about how people in this room think about it and how students think about it. Because if you ask a student, where'd you get that? I got it from Google. They might have gotten it from a blog or from the Wall Street Journal, but they got to those things through Google. But we're saying colleagues' books, even if that's a colleague you talk to on Facebook, right? Like, so we're not thinking of how we got to them, we're thinking of what we got to, and they're thinking how they got there, not what they got to.
And I think that's a really good example of the distinction I want to draw with how you are master learners and how you think about learning and how students think about it. Because one of our jobs is helping them get to this point, to realize that's the kind of learning you're doing. You're building big learning networks, and yeah, you have tools to do it. Google might be one of them, but another one might be this person you ran into, at a conference, in an internship, study abroad, whatever it is, or it might be someone that your professor introduces you to, or a fellow student introduces you to. So yeah, you're right, they have a very shallow understanding of, oh yeah, I just Googled it, and not really understanding the knowledge networks that are laying behind that. And so I think I really like that idea. So getting students to realize, as they move up the scale to being a master learner, this is what we're trying to get to. We learn everywhere. And I do Google things. I think about, when I want to look up a recipe, I often Google the recipe, but I never stop at the first one. I usually look at 2 or 3 and compare them and sort of come up with my version of what I want to do. And this is something that I've learned as an academic, right? You don't take the first source, you sort of critique them, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, well, thank you for playing along with my exercise. We will try to switch back to the presentation right now. Look, we were successfully doing that. Excellent. So again, this was to point out, this is lifelong learning, but this is also the concept of a learning ecosystem, these are sort of large networks. You're learning everywhere. It's not just the classroom. You get beyond that. And of course, you all realize that. So this is what liberal learning can look like. But what does digital learning look like? And how do we put those two things together? You got to it a little bit with the word cloud, but this is a question that hits close to home for me because I have a 10-year-old. So does anybody know what you're looking at or who you're looking at? Minecraft. Okay. Does anybody recognize the little avatars? This is your pop culture quiz. No one's going to own up to it? Okay, so I have, as I said, a 10-year-old named Roman, because I'm a classicist. So the other day, this was actually maybe like a year ago, he said to me, Mom, I have two people I really want to meet, and they're both British. So what does my little native Texan have to do with people who are British? And it turns out he knows them from YouTube. He calls them YouTubers. And he knows them from playing Minecraft. So let's see a show of hands who knew what Minecraft was again. Yeah, I'm going to give you a little taste of Minecraft so you can grow to love it the way I do. But, he will be playing Minecraft on our Xbox. This is a picture of something he's built there. We actually had to take a picture of the TV, so that's the flash kind of coming off of it. I like the books. So this is one of his creations. We'll be playing, and then he'll have the iPad going to the side with YouTube, and he'll be playing videos on it. And so the guy in the cat suit is holding a cake, which is a very important object in Minecraft because it will rebuild all of your, it rebuilds your health completely, which is very important. So his name is Stampy Cat. He actually is going to have a movie, I think. And the other guy is Dan TDM, and TDM stands for the Diamond of Minecraft, and that's a picture of Dan up in the corner of that other image. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah. That's Dan right there in real life, and then this is his avatar in Minecraft, and he's narrating on one of these videos, he's narrating one of the adventures of Minecraft. And so, Roman will have YouTube going, and for him, it gives him how-to videos, how to do stuff in Minecraft, but it's also just general culture that's grown up around this game. And this is, you can just Google Minecraft, billions of players, one of the best-selling games consistently, like for years, not just like right now. But I also wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what Minecraft looks like, just in case you weren't familiar with it. So I'm going to give you some Minecraft pop culture. People will take songs and make mashups based on Minecraft, and they'll also create original songs around it. So this song will kind of give you. So now we're going to we didn't actually test the audio in advance, so bear with us. We'll see. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay. And I had to get this to the right point because otherwise you have to watch the ad for Annie. Then you'll be singing it to Cry Not Life forever. Okay, and we'll screen it. I won't make you listen to the whole thing.
Yo, I wake up, man, that night flew by. I said, what's up to the beautifulness that's outside? Yeah, maybe only blocks, but you gotta look past that. To me, it's all big jungles and grasslands. I need some tools. Now what should I pick? Axe and a sword, yeah, that should do the trick. And back, never bored, we protect our ticks. I'm so fast and I get out of there quick. And it's that double tap sprint, gotta love it. I'm trying to make something of it. And I'm always running out of food to eat. I guess 10 loaves of bread just wasn't enough for me. Hashtag first world Minecraft problems. 36 ingots just to build an iron golem? Ooh, we better get mining. Then I'm like, OMG, what's that shining? And I've been mining all day, looking for that blue rock in the caves. And when I'm just about crying, what's that? I found a diamond, yeah. Now I'm going all the way. I can build a sword, axe, or a spade. You know I thought I'd never find one. What'd you find? I found a diamond, yeah.
Okay, you get the idea, right? You can turn the lights back on. So now you too can have this as an earworm for the rest of the day and be walking around singing about how you found a diamond. And again, I have the link posted on my blog. Later, you need to get the earworm out by listening to the whole song. But you get the idea, right? So you're in this world. It's very primitive graphics. It's a sort of 16-bit blocks of stuff. And then he says at the beginning of the song, right? You know, you just see blocks, but I see grasslands. And there's two modes of playing Minecraft. You can, so one mode is creative mode. And you can fly in creative mode, and you've got all the materials you want. You can build whatever you want. So you can build that world. Or, again, creative mode right there. Or you can play in survival mode, and there you have to work for everything you get. So you have to mine to find iron so that your pickaxe will be strong enough to mine and find a diamond. And that would help you build the strongest armor that you can get and different things. And there were little recipes people learned. So like my son, actually, when he made his first cake, he came to me and he said, "Mom, I made a cake." I'm like, "Okay." And my husband's like, "No, you don't understand. He just spent 40 minutes collecting the ingredients to make this cake." I'm like, "That much focus?" He's 9. Hey, Brian. So anyway, I find Minecraft very interesting because it allows him to be very creative. I think of it as virtual Legos. He's also a big Lego kid. But I also find it really fascinating because of the culture that has grown up around Minecraft. So the way he learned how to play Minecraft is by jumping in and playing. You know, we got the Xbox. That was one of the first games we got. He started playing, and he knew about it because he'd heard from his friends at school. So then he would hear things you should be able to do, like make a cake, and then he would go try them out. He would also, though, make friends, I guess sort of virtually hear about it from these YouTubers who make all these videos like on a daily basis of, here's me playing Minecraft, or here's a song I made, or here's a world I created, or, you know, there are people who make mini games, so you can go in and play these games. So there's this whole culture that's really built up around it. And this culture is an example of something that Henry Jenkins has termed participatory culture. And so this is one model of learning in the digital ecosystem, one model of learning in the 21st century. So I'm going to read a quote from a piece that's actually a few years old now. It's from 2009 that Henry Jenkins wrote called "Confronting the Challenges of Participatory Culture, Media Education for the 21st Century." So his definition of this, and again, bear with me while I read. A participatory culture is a culture with relatively low barriers to artistic expression and civic engagement, strong support for creating and sharing one's creations, some type of informal mentorship whereby what is known by the most experienced is passed along to novices. A participatory culture is also one in which members believe their contributions matter and feel some degree of social connection with one another, or at least they care what other people think about what they've created. So Jenkins actually argues that there are multiple participatory cultures. That's not just one big monolithic thing. There's lots of cultures. So there's a Minecraft culture. There's also a culture around surfing or a culture around lolcats, right? There are these people that are spending their time sharing these things. Or, you know, the latest meme that goes across the internet, whatever it is. I don't know, what is the latest one? Anyone? I have no idea. My husband's on Facebook all the time. He's always feeding me examples of this. But, you know, yet another version of the song, and I guess maybe a year ago, was Pharrell's Happy, and people were making all these videos, dancing and singing to Happy, that sort of thing, right? So these are all examples of participatory culture. This is a great example of how digital learning has shaped, digital culture has shaped learning. It's networked between people, and it's informal, and it still feels very high touch. So my son has actually had a few experiences where he'll be playing a game in Xbox Live, and he will see someone with a username he recognizes, and he'll be like, "That's a YouTuber. Like, I know these people." It feels very high touch to him. And he actually has had one experience where somebody sent him a message later and said, "I recorded this play, and you know, if you want to see it, you can go kind of see, you can see this video, it's on my YouTube channel." Now, okay, this raises issues of privacy and safety and all of that. He's not there out playing on his own name. He's actually playing under my husband's name, so. But yeah, and we're always like, you're not allowed to talk to these people. So there are definitely things you need to consider when you're sending your 10-year-old out into this world, but I do think it's an interesting model of learning, and it kind of dovetails with the model of learning we were showing in that word cloud earlier. So I'm also a member of a participatory culture, and the one that I'm a member of is built around learning, right? So quick poll, have you ever gotten a teaching idea from a colleague? Raise your hand. Right? This is where I get all of my best teaching ideas from colleagues, where, you know, we sort of share. We saw that on the word cloud. And this idea is instantiated in a project that Erica mentioned earlier, a project I'm working on right now called Digital Pedagogy in the Humanities, Concepts, Models, and Experiments. I am one of 4 general editors, along with Matt Gold, Kathy Harris, and Gentry Sayers. The project is now under contract with MLA. The first batch of keywords in this project will be going into open peer review any day now. So the project not only will be published under an open access license, it's Born Digital, published open access. It will be going through open peer review, and it's also being openly edited. So you can see it now if you go to our GitHub repository, github.com, curate teaching, you can see the first set of keywords. And so one of the things we're doing here is really opening up what does it look like to produce scholarship. Think about the learning opportunity here for your students, right? They think a book comes out fully formed. And they're disappointed when you tell them that you need to, sorry, I don't know why this is auto-advancing. They're disappointed when you tell them they need to draft and then revise and iterate. So this actually shows them, look, this is what it looks like when scholars draft and revise and iterate and refine and repeat. You can kind of go back and see different versions. And GitHub is actually a software versioning tool. So this idea of repetition and iteration is very normal in the world of software. Again, I work in Austin. This is a tech capital. South by Southwest is going on right now. And one of the mantras in Austin is fail early and fail often, right? You keep, and then you repeat until you refine, until you get it right. That sort of attitude is very normal in the tech world, but it's something that our students need to think about as they bring it to their own work of how to have a process. So the way this is constructed, as I said, it kind of models the participatory culture of teaching and learning. So we've asked experts in digital pedagogy to curate pedagogical artifacts. So what's a pedagogical artifact? It's a syllabus or an assignment, or maybe the results of an assignment. And it's an example, exemplifies digital pedagogy in some way. And these artifacts are being curated around keywords that to us exemplify digital pedagogy. So one of the first keywords is hybrid. I have a few coming in right now. Multimodal, I still need to read over, just got turned in. Open is also coming in for me soon. So we've each, the general editors, we've divided up the keywords and we're editing and providing feedback, and then we're getting new versions, and then they'll go on to open peer review. But again, this really exemplifies how I think about pedagogy and how I think about learning in the digital ecosystem. We're all curating sets of resources for ourselves, sources and people, and we're building our learning networks. And I think curation is really a key skill in the 21st century. That idea of taking a source and then using it and hacking it and rebuilding it is something that's also very normal here. So it's sort of the mashup. And one of the interesting trends we've already seen and some of the artifacts that are collected is that we're getting people who give examples of an assignment, but it'll be like the second version of an assignment. So more than one of our curators has said, okay, here's an assignment. X person is the first person who used this and published it openly, kind of put it out on their website, and here's this person's version of it. And I find that really interesting because, again, it replicates how I tend to borrow and reuse. And for me, borrowing is okay because I study Latin literature. It's very derivative. They're very conscious of borrowing from the Greeks. So, you know, the reality is, right, I take something and then I hack it and I make it my own. I make it work for my own needs. Anyway, we hope that once this is finished, and it's going to be going out in several batches, we will have this whole collection of models. Not that you would take a model and explicitly replicate it, but that you would take it and make it your own and make it work for your own needs. So, okay, what I want to do for you now then is really get at the question of what does liberal education look like in the digital ecosystem? And I'm going to do it by giving you lots of these sorts of pedagogical artifacts or models. And I'm going to take you through a whole series of them very quickly. As I said, you will have the references. In fact, the slides will be on my blog. The references are up there right now. By the way, this is me in Minecraft. This is my son. He made there's an app where you can make Minecraft avatars. And so he made this for me on his mobile phone, which is my old mobile phone. So anyway, you can go to my blog and find the slides and references. And I'm going to take you through these examples. And I've put them in an order so that you can think about how you would scaffold this kind of digital learning as liberal learning, in the digital ecosystem, beginning at sort of the beginning levels and sort of moving up to advanced and capstone levels. So we're going to go through a whole series of examples right now. Okay. So one of the first skills, at least in classical studies, that we need students to learn is how to read. Okay? I mean, they come to college knowing how to read, but they don't know how to read the way we do. They don't understand critical reading. And I think this is also a nice metaphor, by the way, for technology. They come to college knowing how to use technology, but they don't know how to use technology critically. And I would, in fact, argue that for you guys, for the digital tools that you use, you are a far more sophisticated user of them than your students. And that explains why when you try to get them to do something digitally, and somehow they don't know how to do it, even though they're very tech savvy and they're all digital natives, right? So critical reading is one of the skills. Sorry, I think I accidentally saved my slide timings at some point. So when I was going through this, hit the wrong button, and I'm just going to have to keep flipping through here. Okay, so reading is, again, one of those first skills that they learn, but it's sometimes really hard for us to tell how they're reading or what they're reading. So the advantage of social annotation is that it actually makes visible the reading that they're doing. Has anyone ever used any social annotation tools? Oh, cool. What do you use?
I can't even remember what I used, but I was at a digital humanities thing and we played with some of those, and it was really quite interesting. I can't remember what the name of it is. Name a couple and I can identify it.
This one is called Classroom Salon.
It's not that.
But there's one called There's a ton out there. Rap Genius. It's very popular. Hypothesis. Comment Press. Hypothesis? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, cool. I'll be interested to hear more about that later. So the idea of this one is Classroom Salon. What I like about it is that, and I've only used this, I've played with this like once, so I'm not saying go out and use it, but it's a nice example. So here, students highlight and comment on pieces of the text, and you'll notice that one piece of that text is dark red. So this is a heat map of things that they're actually commenting on. So if you think about it, you assign them something to read, you see what they comment on as they're reading, and then you can actually use this in class the next day because maybe they've hit on the most important piece in this text. And then you can validate that and build on it. But maybe they've completely missed the point, and then you can redirect. So it actually becomes a tool for you to help them learn better and see how they're learning. Yes?
So just real quick, so does everybody comment on the same article? So those are all different users? Okay, so there's no, it's all there in one place.
It's all there in one place, yeah. Now, and you can do this in Classroom Salon, but you know what? You can do this in Google Docs. So I actually have done this with my students reading Virgil's Aeneid. I would just sort of paste the text of the Aeneid in. And I gave them very specific instructions of what they were supposed to be looking for. So grammatical things and also sort of culture and other things. And again, you can use Comment Press plugin for WordPress blogs and do this. There's lots of ways to kind of do an assignment like this. But the idea is that it helps make reading visible for students. So that they can progress and it's open. So another early skill for students might also be collecting data. So students can practice partnering with technology by using mobile devices. And the example here is an app called iNaturalist. This gets used at the Wild Basin Wilderness Preserve, which is a wilderness preserve that St. Edward's, the university I'm at now, owns in Austin. And they can use this app on their mobile phones, go out, take pictures of flora and fauna on the wilderness preserve, and then they can send it to the Wild Basin Biodiversity Project, which is part of the iNaturalist app. This is a project that was set up by the head of Wild Basin. This is the sort of map of Wild Basin. This is an older picture, but you can see all of those points that are mapped here are data points where people have contributed. Some of these are St. Edward's students, some of them are actually elementary students. It's a very basic skill, going out and collecting data. But what I think is interesting about it is that you get to the next level of aggregating the data together, and then more advanced students can do things with that data. They can use that data to approach the unscripted problem of the environment in Austin. And what does that environment look like? Yeah. This is when technology gets started. So this kind of project is something that Ed Ayers has called generative scholarship. It's the idea that you're not just producing a piece of scholarship that will ultimately answer the question and close down interpretation, but it's actually a type of scholarship that opens interpretation up. So it's a tool for doing more, so generating more questions by looking at this data. And as this database is constantly added to, it's going to generate new questions for students. So that's a sort of more advanced level or intermediate level of working in the digital ecosystem. On the side of the humanities, here's a word cloud. So as you see, here's a great example of a word cloud where somebody did not turn off the stop words. And I actually gave this assignment to my students. I had them go play with Voyant, with those tools. And there's a whole suite of tools, and I let them pick the ones they wanted to. And I had them drop in a translation of Virgil's Aeneid because they don't have stop words for Latin and Voyant, but they do for like French and some other languages. So if you're teaching languages, modern languages, some of them might work there. So this was an interesting experiment for my students, and one of the interesting things they got out of it was, I should actually probably stop and fix that, but I'm not going to. So one of the interesting things they got out of this, after I told them about stop words, was to look back at this text, and what are the words that you're seeing the biggest right here?
Yeah.
That, okay. Now that's a real red herring because no definite articles in Latin, right? So what else are you seeing big? With, to, of. Anybody know what cases those are? What cases, grammatical cases? Dative, yeah. One of the things my students actually got was the point I have been trying to make all semester. Virgil loves the dative and ablative. If you would please just memorize your dative and ablative endings, you will, for all the vocabulary words, you don't have to memorize the whole paradigm for that word. Just know the dative and ablative. It will make reading the Aeneid really easy. This brought that home to them. And it was really funny how well they said it. But it also then became an opportunity to start talking about themes in Virgil. And we redid the word cloud and sort of pulled the stop words out, and they could actually start talking about themes that were coming out of Virgil. So text analysis tools can then become a way to start students thinking about interpretation. And I think this was really interesting. I was teaching an intermediate Latin class. It was really interesting for the students I had who were taking Latin but were not classics majors and who were science majors. This made sense to them in a way that sort of close reading of text, literary interpretation did not. Going at, okay, this is a way to start interpretation actually made more sense to them. So another way you might do the intermediate level of learning in the digital ecosystem is this project right here called Wikistorming. This is a project that was part of FemTechNet. Is anyone in FemTechNet here or familiar with it? Familiar with it, okay. So FemTechNet is, they like to call themselves a DOC, Distributed Online Collaborative Course. It's the feminist version of a MOOC. It's like the anti-MOOC. So the idea here is that you have a bunch of feminists all over the world who are working together, and they produced a set of videos with sort of famous feminist thinkers talking about feminism and technology, or famous women who work in technology, and they shared those, and then they did activities together. So they were sort of collaborative courses to some sense. They were going through some of the same materials, but they all had their own syllabus. They did some things together and some things apart. It was a very porous, open network learning. Some places might have just one student or just one person doing it. Some places have whole classes. But one of their common activities was one they called Wikistorming. And again, this is laid out on their website. So this was in 2013. I keep thinking I've hit pause and it won't move on, but it keeps doing it. So their goals of this project, and again, I'm reading them. It's very tiny, and I didn't put my reading glasses on, so bear with me. So the goals of this project were adding the feminist scholarship, adding feminist scholarship to the already existing content on Wikipedia, creating and expanding articles on women who played and are playing important roles in history and current events, making Wikipedia readers and editors more aware of the systemic gender bias inherent in the encyclopedia structure, encouraging feminist academics and activists to contribute to Wikipedia and help revolutionize its culture, and participating in Wikipedia's processes. So what students would do was, all of these distributed classes were going into Wikipedia and editing and adding articles. But they were doing it according to the rules of Wikipedia. In other words, this was community engaged learning in a virtual community, because they figured out not just how to change something on Wikipedia, which you can do, but how to change it in such a way that it would actually stay, because they actually became part of the process. And that was very interesting community engaged learning experience. Okay, next example of sort of an advanced way. Okay, does anybody in this room recognize this? Hi, Laura. I saw your name on the list. I'm like, oh, I've got to put this in. So here's another way of doing learning in the digital ecosystem. And I refer you to Laura to answer any questions about this. This is the story mapping project from Muhlenberg College. If I mess this up, you'll correct me, right? So this has students engaging with members of the community through digital storytelling. And then those stories are aggregated together onto a Google map. So again, it's another way of working the digital ecosystem using digital tools, but engaging with a very real, local, physical community instead of a virtual community. I'm going to read, again, some text from the website. Students in this documentary research have been exploring the theory and practice of documentary research in the context of Allentown. The course examines what Robert Coles identifies as the moral dilemmas and ethical tensions inherent in doing documentary work, including the relationship between objectivity and subjectivity in representing the lives of others, doing justice to the human particularity of documentary subjects, responsibility to the community and their own location as documentarians within the community. So they're given very authentic learning experiences. They take what they've learned about documentary work and they go out and apply it in their community, and then they aggregate all that work together and, again, build a set of networked knowledge that consists of digital stories very close to you in Allentown. And I enjoyed watching the story about Constitution Drive, because that was the closest point I could get to Bethlehem. So again, really interesting project and a way to have students take the skills they're learning in class and go out and apply them in their community. So another way that we use digital tools is for communication and collaboration. At St. Edward's University, one of the tools we use is high definition video conferencing, because when I got there, we have some high definition video conferencing rooms in the libraries. And we use those to connect with partner institutions we have around the world, and this green is kind of showing some of those first connections we made. But we also use these tools to have faculty members tap into their distributed knowledge networks and then connect their students into those networks. So in our Global Studies Senior Seminar last spring, we had a faculty member who connected her students with a class in Moscow to discuss what was going on in Crimea and Ukraine. So this was her personal connection, but she was able to use this technology to bring her students into a network, and there was a seminar in Moscow going on at the same time. We have another faculty member who's actually an activist around human trafficking, and she's a lawyer as well, and she's able to connect her students into her personal network of other activists and experts around human trafficking. So these activities model for students how to create their own networks, those networks of colleagues. This is how we get a little bit deeper and show them, okay, we don't just Google things and find it. We're going to specific people and they're connecting us to other information. And this is really, the global digital classroom for me is really this large learning ecosystem. And it has all of these parts in it. Some of these are digital tools and places, but some of these can be very physical as well. So you see sort of physical conversations going on. And our students, in order to get to the level of learning that we have, need to practice building and learning in this networked ecosystem. So to become lifelong learners, they need to practice learning in that ecosystem, not just in the classroom. So we might start in the classroom, but we have to think about how we're getting them out into this world very intentionally and very transparently telling them, this is what you need to be doing. We also need to be thinking about how we scaffold that curriculum. So how do we build up those skills? It can't just be one and done. We can't just have one class doing story mapping, right? It has to be repeated. So that's what some of the things I was trying to show you is having them use digital tools and resources. A next level might be contributing to digital tools and resources, and then it might be producing digital tools and resources. So what would that look like? This is a project called Minecrafted History by Sean Graham at Carleton University in Canada. And you know, because Minecraft, I just couldn't let it go. So Sean helps his students learn both historiography and critical thinking about digital culture through this project, Minecrafted History. His students explore how history is represented in digital media, and then they practice creating representations of history in digital media. They first used the game engine Twine, and then they went into Minecraft. And he assigned them 3 potential sort of histories that they could work on. One of them was the history of the Ottawa Valley, which is what you're seeing right here. Sort of a visual representation of it, and then the Minecraft representation of it. They could have done the Canadians on the Western Front in World War I, and colonization and resistance in the Roman world. He also assigned written work along with this. So he had them do some papers where they would reflect on it. They had to talk about it. They had to do a paradata document that actually included all of their sources, justifications of choices they made in their representation. So there was quite a bit of scholarship behind this. It just happened to be expressed in a Minecraft world. All of this is available on his GitHub site, so you can actually download these worlds and play them if you want to. On the computer, not on the Xbox. But I think it's really interesting because he was able to take, these were advanced history students, who take everything they know about history and historiography and then apply it in a completely digital context. Another example of a project that gets at kind of capstone level is situating the global environment. These are projects at Lewis and Clark colleges. They're interdisciplinary projects. They are, and this is a project that's run by Jim Proctor. And so the students engage in quite a few different high-impact practices, including undergraduate research, community engagement, and study abroad. And then they output their work in social media, and in digital tools. So they document and share the research projects that they're doing, including digital bibliographies, maps, tags, concept maps, and mashups. And these are all output to a blog. And Laura, again, also worked with another project with Jim that sort of got it at doing this kind of thing. So they've not only gained experience working with network digital tools, but doing capstone level work and student research, but they also now have something that they can show potential employers. So they have done what AAC&U would call signature work. This is a project that they had to work on. They worked on for a long amount of time, and this helps develop agency and self-direction. So what I was hoping that you would get through looking at all of these examples are some important insights into what liberal education looks like in the digital ecosystem. One of those insights is that we're really breaking down the boundaries of the course. The sort of boundaries of the course have really dissolved. Now, if you think about it, right, we broke down the boundaries of the classroom a long time ago. We created something we like to call homework. But this digital learning takes that even further. So courses stretch out across time. So if you have students contributing to an ongoing faculty project, like the Wild Basin Biodiversity Project, suddenly the work they're doing is stretching out over time. They're contributing to something larger. This work also extends into virtual spaces and into like Wikipedia or Minecraft. It also can stretch between different campuses or into physical and virtual, local and global communities. It is both learning that is formal and informal. So those boundaries of the course are really getting erased in this kind of model. Another thing that we see in this model is something that Frank Levy and Richard Burney called dancing with robots. Has anybody ever read this? It's an interesting piece that actually kind of lays out what is it that jobs are going to look like in the 21st century when automation and outsourcing have essentially eroded the middle class, right? So the jobs in the middle have gotten replaced, and we'll have jobs on one end of the spectrum will be doing non-repeatable manual tasks or service industry. And the jobs at the other end of the spectrum that remain, that can't be outsourced or automated, will be dealing with new information and dealing with unscripted problems. And you'll know this is what we're talking about for liberal education. How do we prepare students for that? And what Levy and Murnane say is, we need to prepare students for new information and unscripted problems, but we also need to prepare them to do that, to approach those using digital tools. They need to learn how to dance with robots. So if we want to teach our students how to dance with robots, that means we have to dance with robots as well. You guys are all doing it already. You're sitting there with your mobile devices, your iPads, and your MacBook Pros, right? And you may not be using as many technologies as your students, but the technologies that you are using, you're using in a much more sophisticated way. So when you take something like social annotation and use that to make decisions about how you're going to address a subject in class, that's dancing with robots. When you have your students blog or do responses in the discussion forum of your learning management system, that's dancing with robots. When you're using technology to gather data, when you're using text analysis to get first insights into a text, that's another example of what I mean. So we need to be modeling that skill for our students, and then we need to give them practice at it repeatedly, moving from that initial sort of social annotation exercises of digital reading all the way up to these big capstone level projects. So what I've tried to lay out for you then is a model for what digitally informed general education would look like. It's practice building learning networks and learning in the ecosystem. It's dissolving the boundaries of the course. And it's practicing digitally augmented problem solving repeatedly. And it, again, means that all of us have to be dancing with robots. So, thank you. Okay, I am happy to take questions or comments. Yes.
I want to go back to the beginning and ask, is there a difference between liberal learning and liberal arts? And I guess it's a question I'm asking myself, so that's why I'm asking you.
Mm-hmm.
I get a sense, I'm going to partially answer it, but I really want your sense of things. I'm starting to see that liberal learning, when we talk about that, it's a set of skills like critical thinking. Liberal arts is connected to those traditional disciplines that we talk about.
Right.
And I guess I'm trying to find the liberal arts in the conversation that seems to be we're having about liberal education. So the question in this is, where are the liberal arts in this? Where are the liberal arts in the conversations about digital learning in the ecosystem? Or
Right.
Are we not
Are
building
you
off
saying,
of those
you're asking,
traditional
do we
disciplines?
throw out the liberal arts?
I'm sorry?
I'm a classicist. No, we're not going to throw out the liberal arts, but where are they? I actually like to go back to a definition for liberal education that one of the former directors of NITLE, Joellen Parker, laid out. And it actually this was one of those learning moments for me that really sort of crystallized something. Because we hear liberal arts and liberal education talked about a lot without really defining it. And she actually said, institutions define these things in about 4 different ways, and I'll see if I can remember all 4. So one way, when we're talking about it, liberal arts sometimes refers to a body of knowledge. So classical studies is kind of like the original, the liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium. This is the education that you need. Well, in ancient Rome, it's the education you needed to be a politician, to be a speaker, right? This is the basic knowledge, body of knowledge you should be getting. So that's one approach, is that it's a body of knowledge. Another approach is that liberal arts is a type of college, right? Small, high touch. People usually are living on campus, residential. So when we say liberal arts, that's another thing we often think of. And then we move into kind of broader definitions. So that it is, in fact, an approach to teaching. That it is certain skills that we expect students to be developing. And then I would say AAC&U actually particularly argues that liberal education, and they really shift into liberal education because they want to make the point that it should be happening at community colleges and large R1s and big state schools just as much, and for-profits in fact, just as much as it's happening at small liberal arts colleges. For them, they feel that this is the training that an educated citizen should receive. Now, they also will say that it should include breadth and depth of knowledge about the liberal arts, that there is a body of knowledge that we need to learn, and that those ways of teaching, high impact practices, help us get there, and help students develop those skills that they learn. So what I was hoping you would see with a lot of the examples I shared is that, sure, some of them are like gaming and new media, but there is definitely still a place for those traditional subjects. So, in my own discipline of classical studies, it's kind of has a split personality. So there's some people who are still very traditional, the books, the scrolls, all of that. And there are some people who are using a lot of digital tools, but they're still studying the same set of texts. We found new ways to get into them. And I think one of the things that we are in this transition point, one of the things we really need to do is, help convey the love of learning that we have for these topics and help people still see the value. I still think there's value there. But understand that you can get at it in new ways. Classical studies is definitely still around. I mean, look at the History Channel. You might disagree with some of the ways they present it, but that's an opportunity for us to come in and co-opt it and present it in new ways. So I think the project that Sean has his students do, where they Minecraft history, he's doing very traditional historiography, questioning your sources, thinking about how you represent history, but he's recognizing that there's a new type of literacy here, that we need to help our students learn how to read not just books in the library, but also games. Like, some people's understanding of history and classics is shaped by the ways they encounter it in digital media. It's going to be shaped by games they play just as much, more so I would imagine, than it's shaped by some historical texts that are going to be reading. Yes?
That history example raised the question for me about gender and the extent to which your group considers issues of gender and the way this pedagogy gets used at the higher level, like in a college history class. Because, and maybe this will change, but it's been my perception that boys grow up playing games like Minecraft perhaps a little bit more than girls do. Maybe that will change.
And Legos too.
Right. And so when they get to a history class and the professor uses Minecraft, are the boys at an advantage in using that pedagogy?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one of the most frustrating things. And I don't know. I have a boy at home, and I grew up with all brothers, but I sort of feel like it feels like that whole gender split in pop culture is getting more and more distinct. So we know you go to the store, there's the pink and purple aisle. We don't go on that aisle. And in fact, someone was telling me the other day that even in computer science, sort of women in computer science peaked in the 70s and were going down. So yeah, there are people who are talking about this. I mean, I think certainly FemTechNet is a project that's trying to address this. But yeah, in digital humanities, there are certainly people talking about this. There was a great piece, I'll find the reference for you, and it was written by Amy Earhart, and she actually does this study where she goes, and when we first had the internet, there were all these projects putting little red text by women online and sort of collecting stuff. And again, big flourishing, and then they've slowly disappeared. And what are we doing in digital humanities? We are recreating the canon in digital form. But there are people who are asking that question and talking about it. And I think you're right, it's definitely something to pay attention to. And there are some people who say that one of the origins of digital humanities was people sort of fleeing theory and wanting to do concrete stuff. So I think that critique is definitely there. Debates in digital humanities probably has a piece about that as well. I just saw another hand up right there.
My question, I raised it because it follows on with Teresa's in some ways, in the sense that it's a philosophical question, so I apologize for that. But you referenced a few minutes ago a predicted future of economics and labor, which presents a very disturbing dichotomy for those of us who are interested in human economy. Could you say something about your vision of how what our responsibility is as educators, as people interested in liberal learning, and not capitulating to that. I mean, so much of this, I have to say, it's easy often to feel that this is axiomatic, therefore we will do this.
Yeah.
And my hope, if there's a sense of empowerment of agency, is to tell students that this is not a preformed future.
Right.
And that future is not a future that anybody in Israel right now would want to help construct.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that piece, Dancing with Robots, is one I got from AACNU. He did the closing plenary 2 years ago, and it was part of the Centennial Symposium this year. I like it because, A, it kind of makes a point, but I think, you know, part of the agency is not just saying, okay, we're not going to engage with digital stuff at all. Part of the argument there is saying you have to engage, and your agency is, you can do this. I mean, you learn new stuff all the time, so you can use digital tools. I used to, you know, when I worked at NITLE years ago, I was often saying, well, it's okay, if you're interested, here's some digital tools you can use, and now more and more I am saying, no, you need to engage. And your responsibility is to engage so that we don't have this sort of stark future. Here's what we're afraid of, and we talked about this a lot in the digital group in GEMS. If we don't come in and co-opt digital culture and create a vision of liberal learning that takes advantage of digital tools and sort of moves out into the ecosystem, if instead we hunker down and we maintain liberal education at a set of elite colleges, the rest of the world, here's what's going to happen. For them, combining education and digital tools is going to be content delivery. So the really dystopian future is we're going to put MOOCs out there, it's content delivery, it's a textbook essentially, and it's not the kind of support that we want students to have. And we're going to have policymakers who say, that's okay, sure, we're giving access to everybody, but that's not equity-minded. It's pushing out to those who can't afford it, you can take the MOOC, and those who are elite, who can afford it, who know that they should come to this kind of learning, they'll get the better learning. Randy Bass, who was on this group with me, one of the things he says is that if you think about what is distinct about college learning, you know, how do we differ from the MOOC? We have two things that are distinct that we will maintain. We used to have three, right? We would say credentials, but that might be going away. So what we can say that we have is mentored learning. Again, you are all master learners, and you can mentor your students and model for them and help them get to that level. And we also have the arc of learning. We have the curriculum. So it's not a bunch of disparate experiences, but we give students the sense that you do need to scaffold. You do need to see growth and proceed in your learning. But I do think that, you know, and again, you definitely called me on sort of
it wasn't personal at all. I'm just saying that's not your language. That's something that we've all been indoctrinated about in some ways. But the instrumentality of it is something we want to
So this is why I find that particular principle of agency and self-direction very important, because I do think that this is something we need to give our students. The idea that they are in control of their own learning. It's not that we're opening up their heads and pouring in content, but that we're going to get them to the point that by the time they graduate, they can be like us. They can go learn on their own whatever they need to learn and get past that point. And then they may, you know, change that sort of stark future that we're talking about. Is that good?
That's okay.
Yeah.
Nothing about that was personally directed by Mr.
No. Okay, other questions or comments?
Well, I'll jump in there because I think it's still a valid fear. And I guess my question is a more practical one, but I think it comes back to philosophy. I guess I'm sitting here as an individual really overwhelmed to some degree about the possibilities in an exciting way, but also in a concerning way. And so, okay, as an individual faculty member, and we are a subset of the faculty, we're ready for this, okay? So we're engaging with it, we're thinking about where this can go. So that's kind of a bottom-up change. Mm-hmm. And the philosophy goes to that. What I'm curious about from your point of view and from your experience, what are the institutional benchmarks, the critical institutional supports that make this happen and make it happen in an optimal way, in a proper way, in a way that keeps us on track to do it well?
So I'll start again from St. Edward's. We're kind of struggling thinking about this right now, and it's something that I've been working on since I got there. For us, the project is creating the 21st century learning ecosystem, because that's kind of a line that calls back to our strategic plan. I started working there in July of 2013. Our new vice president for academic affairs, Mary Boyd, and I started on the same day, which is really good for me. And so she's, thinking a lot about this. Because one of the things I think, and especially you see this in digital humanities, we've been really good at getting individual faculty. But we need to get the whole culture. So we're thinking about, in a really holistic way, about institutional change at St. Edward's, and we've kind of been playing with this framework of the ecosystem. What does the ecosystem mean? So from IT's point of view, and I am embedded in information technology, that means that we come up with a set of technologies, the target virtual environment, that we think our students should use. And we've come up with a framework and some principles for what those technologies are. So we try to give them, for example, tools that they're going to be using once they leave. We're kind of playing off this idea of they need to learn how to learn, and the environment they're going to be playing in and learning in and engaging in civic life in for the rest of their life. And they need to get used to that. They need to get used to change. So for us, we're thinking about, okay, what is a set of tools? And by the way, we're going to have to actually constantly be changing these tools, so we need some processes in place to help us switch tools out and quickly get people used to using them. Just one challenge. So that's one piece of it. It's the framework and the vision. But that vision has an academic side as well. So Mary and I, after an Apple event that some of us were at last April, we got stuck in the San Jose airport and spent some time in a wine bar where we came out with a vision of what we think our students should learn. And that vision was what we call, it started out as the 5 C's. Students should be able to communicate, create, collaborate, and compete in the cloud. We got back to campus and they said, oh, 5? No, you should have 7 C's. So we're a Holy Cross institution. We've got the anchors, right? So we're very nautical. So Mary said, well, there was Chardonnay and Cabernet. But then we came out with in the cloud for their communities and their careers. So this is sort of a guiding vision that we're kind of talking up a lot about. So we get the vision in place. That's part of it. But the other thing we need to do is put supports in place for pedagogical innovation. So some of the ways we've attacked that at St. Edward's, we've used to do a summer institute when I started. IT, or Instructional Technology, put on a summer institute where we got academic affairs to give stipends to faculty. We had money for 10, we had to beg to get 7. And I said, we need to stop begging people to take our money and to come learn from us. And instead we created something we call innovation fellowships. And they're peer reviewed, and we moved the application deadline up so that it's at the time when people are actually thinking about what they're going to do in the summer. We also moved the institute to May from July because faculty are on 9-month contracts. So holding an event for them in the summer, not as likely to get people. So we came up with an innovation fellowship that's peer reviewed. They have to put an application in, and there's certain benchmarks they have to meet in order to get the little bit of money that we're giving them for this. But it also creates a learning community. And that learning community will start to change culture. And this is something that I've seen at multiple institutions where you start to have cohorts of people moving through programs. Dickinson's been doing this for years with their Willoughby fellowships. But the idea is that you have people learning together. One of the things I would like you to get out of today is, right, you are becoming a learning community talking about these ideas. It's the same kind of participatory culture that starts sharing with each other. So that's one of the things. But we also need to not just work on pedagogical innovation. We also have new grants called SPICE, because we like our acronyms as well, for scholarship, pedagogical innovation, and creative expression, which will give faculty reassigned teaching time to pursue some of these things. And again, it's something they have to apply for, so they have some skin in the game. They also have to assess and turn in final reports. And then we're very much pushing SOTL, so Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. We are a teaching institution, so for us, Scholarship of Teaching and Learning counts for research and scholarship. So that's, again, another approach. But the last part of that framework is we can't just change the students and the faculty and the administrators. We need to change the rest of the university culture. So one of the things we're running is something called 100% Digital. And we've been heavily engaged with the academic support services and turning this into a digital department. Because if we're all doing stuff digitally and they're still just using paper and face-to-face, and they're not open to, you know, working digitally, communicating, collaborating digitally, then the students aren't having a consistent experience. So we have to take the whole institution with us. So that's what it looks like at the institutional level. But I'm really interested in this idea of how do you support innovation? How do you move it from these isolated instances to an integrated curriculum? And in fact, the workshop I'm going to be teaching next really focuses on that. So part of it is it's not just one and done. It's not just one experience. It has to be scaffolded across the curriculum. Students need to be having these experiences repeatedly. So that's part of it. To do that, we need to help faculty engage in using these kinds of tools and give them the supports to use them and validate when they are using them. Encourage them to use them in a very intentional and critical way. I think one of the biggest pitfalls is I'm going to use technology because it engages my students. No, it doesn't. They're going to get mad at you. I mean, because we're telling them you have to use technology and not in a very superficial way. It's not for entertainment and gaming, which you're used to. We're making you use it to do academic work. It's just like they don't like reading for academic work. So we need to recognize that, and you need to recognize that this transition takes time. It's a very iterative process, right? You're going to try it, it's not going to work, you're going to try it again. And then it's not going to work. And, so another thing we're actually trying to put in place is something they started at Middlebury, Allison Byerly did, where you can actually get a pass on your course evaluations if you're doing pedagogical innovation. So you would still collect course evaluations, you would have to write a report on what you learned from them, but it won't count against you. Because this is one of the things we constantly hear. Well, I would try something new, but my students won't like it. They'll ding me on the course evals. We're also, with our innovation fellows, we talk a lot about managing students' expectations and being very transparent so that, you know, they understand this is what you're getting into. And they understand, you know, I think it's something Jeff McClarkin calls productive discomfort. I'm going to make you really uncomfortable, and you're going to learn from that. And it might mitigate it a little bit, but you also just have to know that it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to work out perfectly the first time. That was a really long-winded answer to that. Great. Other questions or comments? I think there could be a break, coffee.
Yeah, there should be coffee and fruit having appeared in the hallway. I know some people teach it at 10:20 and may have been already filtering out.
Anyone who's got kids in the school system, they all play.
Yeah,
they're all there.
Oh yeah, I have
Okay. All right. So if there are other questions, maybe we can continue this over coffee and fruit, but feel free to sort of start getting coffee and fruit. I know there'll be some people coming in for the workshop, some people going out because they have other commitments. Let's give a brief applause.